Well, hello, everybody. I was trying to get all the things working on the back end because we have something so special to share with you today. Okay, so y'all know that I'm like the podcast obsessed person, but I'm also a big music fan. Okay, like I love music and I get so many questions from podcasters all the time asking, where can I find music? What do you do for music? What should you consider for music? And I was just really kind of like out of luck introduced to someone who knows all about music, and they are just getting started with specifically working on music and for music, with music, however you want to like word that, for podcasting, like for podcasters. So I hope that you find this kind of impromptu training really helpful. For anybody that's watching the replay, make sure that you reach out to today's guest. And I hope that if you have any questions, you will reach out to us. If you have any questions at any point during this live stream today, put them in the comments and let us know what your questions are. But I'm excited to introduce you today to Mike from Intro Outro Bed. Like I said, they are a music production company that is wanting to work with podcasters. So pay attention. If you are in the process of creating your podcast, getting it launched, and you're to that point of, I don't know where to find reliable podcast music, you're going to find lots of value in today's conversation. So welcome, Mike. I'm going to bring you up on stage. Hello. How are you?
Great, Crystal. It's very nice to be here. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody.
Yes, this is so awesome. So I know we're going to have some people here live and we're going to have some questions, and then we'll have people on the replay as well. So, like I said, make sure if you have a question for myself or for Mike, put them in the comments. But I just want to get started with how you got into this. Like, how did you start producing music, and why specifically now are you doing it for podcasters?
Yeah, so TJ and I go back quite a ways. We met doing broadcast work together. I was on the broadcasting side, and TJ was on the music side. But we started working together, gosh, around 2008, I think. And we separated, maintained touch and stuff like that. But I kept going in the broadcasting area, then more to the online side. And eventually I needed some music. I wanted some creativity because I have zero creative ability except with a microphone. But TJ, on the other hand, is a musician. TJ's been in music for, over 20 years, I think now. And she has a huge network of people. So I figured if anybody can help me out with an intro, with a transition, with outros, with some funky sound effects and things like that, it's going to be TJ. And I knew at the time how important it was to have something original because copyright is no joke. And especially as a podcaster, if you're going to iTunes or something like that, you really need to be careful with that stuff. But you also need to spice up your productions. And so I went to TJ, and TJ was like, this is not my area. But TJ had the experience. So by pushing and pushing and pushing, she created stuff for me, and it sounded great. And I've continued to push her over the couple of years. And finally, I think it was last year, TJ really started to get into it, started to work with other people, giving stuff away. And people liked it, and she's kind of really gotten into it. So yeah, it's been an exciting experience, and that's kind of how it happened.
Very cool. Very cool. So I'm curious because the question that new podcasters often come to me and they're just like, I don't even know what to look for. Like, where do I even get started? Because, if they go onto another platform that offers what they say is royalty free music, like I hate fine print. And there's anytime that's like, I have to read through pages and pages of stuff to see if I can use something, I'm just like, I'm out. I'm going to step away from it. But if someone is looking for podcast music, do you have any suggestions on what they should look for?
Yeah, so obviously, like you said, the royalty free is crucial. Creative content, I think that's what they call it. Common creatives, rather. I think that's right. But like you said, there's a lot of fine print. Sometimes you have to mention their name in the podcast. Sometimes you have to mention their name in the description. Sometimes you don't have to, but they're very specific on what you need to do. And there is a bit of reading, and it gets a little bit nervous. Sometimes you can only use it on this platform, not another platform. And if you're, for example, right now you're going out on YouTube, but I assume this might also go out into a podcast, might end up on Amazon. Well, now you're really getting into some sketchy areas when it comes to the rights that they actually provide you in those contracts. So you actually do have to read those contracts. And that's a pain, especially when you're small, you're kind of nobody. You're not Joe Rogan. You don't have a staff to look out for you. You don't have a lawyer. You're not going to hire a lawyer. And you don't want to spend $1 million using a fantastic song from AC/DC or Celine Dion or whatever it is that you want in your background. That's a huge problem. And then again, you can go on to YouTube where they have a lot of free music that you can insert into your videos. But can you actually use those on other platforms? That's another thing you really got to be careful about. So what does all this mean? Well, it's best to come up with your own stuff. And there's a lot of places out there where you can get your own stuff. And what we call it is an exclusive right. And you have the exclusive rights, which means it's yours. Somebody creates it for you and it's yours. And you can put it anywhere you want without having any, fear of legal problems. It's not that hard. And it's surprisingly, it can be really expensive. It can be hundreds of dollars. It can be thousands of dollars, but it can be, you can get stuff for free. And actually, that's kind of what TJ is offering. And it's yours. And it's comforting to know that you have something that you like, that you kind of helped create, and you can put out there wherever you want, whenever you want. It's just nice.
Oh my gosh. Like you are touching on so many things. So I have had many different experiences with music over the life of my podcast, right? In this podcast journey. And I had met, she's a very big time influencer. And I found out that her husband was a musician and he produced music. And I was like, oh, I have this connection. I'm going to reach out and see how much it would cost. Well, it wasn't an exclusive, right? Of course. And it was going to be anywhere from $500 to $2,000 to use a clip of one song, not even the whole song, like a clip of one song. And I was like, just getting started. I was like, there's no way I can afford this. So like, this is very, very like crucial information that podcasters need to know. Cause I think there's a lot of misinformation about, oh, you can just grab whatever you want on YouTube and just go use it. Just go grab something for free. You can use it. You won't get in trouble. And I'm over here like, no. Please don't do that, because what if you use it in every single piece of content, the artist comes after you, and then all of a sudden you have to either go back and edit that out or just scratch all of that content together. So everything about this conversation today is really important for podcasters to know and to understand in order to not only protect themselves, but to protect your content too. So I was just so excited that TJ reached out and that we're having this conversation. But I want to get into what it is that your company is trying to do. Like y'all are trying to get the word out about intro, outro beds. So can you kind of explain what your vision is of working with podcasters to create this custom music that you're talking about?
Yeah. So TJ is really excited about doing these podcasts. The thing that I think really excites her about working with podcasters is that there's such a massive variety. So as a musician, not me, her, as a musician, this is exciting. It's like, oh, I get to play in this area and this area and this area. And she gets to meet a lot of other musicians online when she needs, some heavy metal riff on a guitar. While TJ plays the guitar, she's not going to use her riff. She's going to go to somebody else who can provide it. So this is exciting for TJ as a person with a musical background, as a producer, and as somebody who can compile and put everything together. So what she wants to do right now, what she's doing is basically just intros. She's trying to reach out to podcasters and say, so you have an intro. I see that it's a Creative Commons intro, which is great, but it's also used on other places, so it's not very unique. Is there a flavor that you want to put out a little more you? For example, do you like a particular musician, Van Halen or Ja Rule or country music or classical music? And it depends, on what type of podcast it is. But that a lot of sports guys, for example, they like that rock, they like that funky pop, stuff like that. So, and she can create it. And what works nicely is if they give her a sample of, this is the song that I like this intro, then TJ actually can recreate something very similar to that. And it's a lot of fun. And this is where TJ's business, where our business is at right now. And what we're hoping to do eventually is to, if people like our stuff, to create the whole suite of products. And what that means is it's not just an intro, but there's bed music. And that's kind of the music that you would have in the background. Maybe if you're doing a top 5 or, something silly in the background, there's some nice beat in the background. There's transitions that are kind of unique to you, unique to your show. And there's, of course, the closing. You want kind of to have the intro and the closing perhaps to be somewhat tied together, have that same flavor so that everything fits nicely. There's, what do you call them? Premieres, not premieres, but like movie intros or stuff like that. When you want to talk about your podcast, give a highlight of the podcast. There's that type of thing. So that's the whole suite of packages that TJ wants to get into, that we want to develop. But right now, as we told you, as you mentioned, we're just getting started and we're having a lot of fun. And intros is what we're focused on. But eventually, we do want to produce a suite of products. And because it's specifically directed to podcasters, they don't need a 4-minute song. Even if they have a bed, it can kind of go on loop. It can kind of be repeated. So it's not going to be $500 or $1,000. It's going to be much more economical. And that's our business angle. When we get there, we think that what we can offer, the time that it takes us to create something, and what we can offer will be significantly cheaper than probably what you can find elsewhere, and just as professional.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love hearing like the background of why you're doing this, why it's important, because I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't know any of this stuff whenever I first started. I had just been listening to podcasts for a really long time, and because I had been listening to these shows that were highly produced, like I had been listening to like the Dave Ramsey's in the podcast world, and like people that have just been doing this for a really long time. And they also had a huge budget, right? Like, let's just be honest. They have a whole studio, they have production teams, they probably have executive producers, like all these things behind their show. And here I am in like small town Texas, and I'm like, oh, I could do all of that. I can duplicate it. But in reality, it is a lot more complex to make sure that you're not stepping on someone else's toes, not using someone else's music. But what you said about other people using the podcast, the custom piece of it is like really important, because I have listened to a few shows and I'm like, I've heard this before. Where have I heard this music? And then I'm like, oh, it's like the thing that music does in your brain, right? It like clicks in like a memory, and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, that's where I like they totally stole that person's music. And then you find out, oh, they're just all sharing it. So I think the custom piece is very, very cool. And Mike actually brought some samples of some of the music that y'all have done. So I'm actually going to pull these up here, and you can tell me which ones you want us to play and to show. Let me know which one you want to start with.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I brought over, because TJ gave me a bunch of stuff. I think the third one there with the face is a jazz intro. You want to click on that, and this is for TJ made this for a podcast that was actually she's making it for a podcast. So this is kind of out there, and I think this is actually a free one on her YouTube channel, but it's a really cool jazz piece. Go ahead and give it a listen. So there'd be an intro in the beginning. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. And then a boom kind of starts. You'd be quiet. And then right now you start talking over the music as it fades out. Very classy. It's very classy, and it fits. Actually, I wish. Thank you. TJ's on there. It was made for Destiny at We Got Time podcast, and she is using it. So this is an exclusive intro that she made for We Got Time podcast. And thank you, TJ. And she's using it, and she loves it. And I personally think it sounds really good. I'm not a big jazz fan, but that was cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And that's the thing. It's like you said, it's very personal. It's exclusive. It's yours. And it's podcasting, as you know, we podcasters want to kind of be a radio DJ, kind of a star, kind of a talk show, David Letterman type thing, or a radio show. And it's very personal, and we all have our own unique styles. And that's the nice thing. If you have a real clear identity on who your avatar is, on who your listener is, on what you kind of represent, choosing a jazzy background is probably going to be so enticing to so many people who are particularly interested in what it is you want to say. Music can really build or enhance that character of your podcast that you're trying to put out there. It's actually really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I remember, whenever I was trying to find music, the idea in my head was, how do I want people to feel? Because there were certain like emotions that were tied to the podcast that I listened to. Like some of them made me feel like, ooh, I could conquer the world with this. And I actually, there's one, it's Brian Buffini. He's like a real estate mogul in San Diego, California, and he is Irish. Like, and he just embraces his Irish heritage. So he has this like really like rock Celtic music in the background. And anytime I listen to it, I'm like, this is like, I feel like I could conquer the world listening to it. So it's so cool. And it does have that emotional connection, especially when you have that custom piece that's tied to your audience. So I love this. Tell me which one you want me to play next. We have 2 more samples.
I think we might have a transition. Yeah, the one that with all the tiny little faces in there. That's a transition. Can you play that one?
Diversity, inclusion, Metacast.
So this is a transition for a podcast called Metacast, and they're in I think it's the HR area, and it was a transition into a segment called diversity and what was the other word? Trans something. Diversity and inclusion. Sorry, diversity and inclusion. So it's actually kind of a mini intro. It's a transition intro into a particular corner where they answer questions of their listeners, talking about those really important issues, especially now in the 2020s, where this has become a big issue. The podcast is huge. So it was really a great honor for us to be able to create. We created their intro too, but also this transition. Transitions are, people don't understand how important a transition is, a musical transition and stuff like that. You got your intro, maybe you have your outro, but if you're a Joe Rogan and you have a name for yourself and everybody knows you and your style, you don't need a transition. Joe Rogan's transition is basically, hey, Jamie, pull up that video. That's his transition. That allows them to move on to something else and stuff like that. But for most of us, it's really nice to give us a break in the show. And also, it's not just for us, it's for the listener too. When they hear that music come up, especially the second or third time they listen to your podcast, they know what's coming up and it's like, oh, this is that fun segment, or this is that cool segment, or now we're going to focus on this one issue. And transitions don't need words like this one did, but they're short and they provide a pause in the podcast so you can easily switch to something else. If you're having an interview like you're having with me, and maybe I'm blabbering on too much, you can actually put that music in, because it's not video in a podcast, put that music in and easily slice me at that perfect word where the point has been made, and then you can move on into something else. So transitions are very useful, and they don't need to be tied to your intro style, your outro style. If they are, that's cool, but they need to be kind of fresh and, once again, unique. You guys, sound effects are copyrighted. Sound effects, those cartoon sounds that we hear and sometimes use, and I do too, they're actually copyrighted, and there's a very high chance that you'll get flagged on something, and you don't want to get flagged on YouTube. You don't want to get flagged on iTunes, or so you just got to be careful.
Yeah, no, and I think it's so important that people do understand that what is happening for their listener when they're listening to the show, and the ad importance. I say ad very loosely because whenever I'm teaching like entrepreneurs, like that is our audience. They are trying to promote their own business, their own services. And I tell them from the beginning, even without, you don't have sponsors, you don't have a brand behind you, you should be promoting your own stuff, whether it's a free Facebook group or even your YouTube channel. And having that ad music, it just brings it from one point to the next. A smooth transition makes all the difference, instead of like, oh, we interrupt this to bring you this. And it's all of a sudden like, wait, what? This just doesn't feel like it all ties together. But music can absolutely do that very smoothly. So I'm glad that you talked about that, because I think it's super, super important. I'm going to add this last one that you have here. And this is more like a rock feel to it, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. Yes.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, everybody, to AM CST podcast.
So I can't remember what this guy's music request was, but it was something. I remember that it was something unfamiliar. Deftones. Thank you, TJ. It was something kind of unfamiliar to TJ. So she listened to a lot of their music, and she said, "Okay, maybe this is kind of right." And she sent it to him, and he said, "Chef's kiss." Oh, it's perfect. So we just love that response, chef's kiss. Now I've heard it before, but now I'm using it all the time. And then she went ahead and, downloaded several of his podcasts and took some of his words and stuff like that, and then threw it in there to add to that entire feel. And the guy's over the moon. He absolutely, chef's kiss, I should say. He absolutely loves it. And it's a really great intro. And once again, a completely different style of music. I mean, we went from jazz to Deftones. I don't even know what genre Deftones is, but like you said, Rocky-esque.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of had like a Limp Bizkit, like Fred
Right, yeah.
Durst kind of appeal to me. That's what I was thinking as soon as I hear it. How they would have like the part of the song. I'm thinking, what is it? I always remember him saying like chocolate starfish or something like in the middle, like on the back end. Like it was like really, oh my gosh, I'm totally dating my music style when I was younger.
Right.
I don't know what's cool now because I
Yeah,
just
right.
listen to podcasts. I don't even listen to music anymore. But oh my gosh. So it is so important. So if anybody's listening, anybody's watching us, how is like, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this because my music experience was kind of terrible in the beginning, only because I thought I just needed one song, one track, and then I could say, oh, well, if I just need 15 seconds or 30 seconds, I can pare it down and make it shorter and try to do this. But I'm going to tell y'all right now, it's a lot harder than it sounds. Like that sounds really easy to just go and grab it. So whenever you work with a client, do y'all typically produce kind of like a set, like even if you take a longer song and then you'll kind of pare it down for them? Or let us know what it's like to work with you and TJ to create this custom music.
Yeah, so let's say you said that I like Limp Bizkit. So what TJ does is she takes a couple of Limp Bizkit songs and she tries to imitate that style. And what she does, because it's specifically for podcasts, generally podcast intros are less than 30 seconds, sometimes as few as 5 seconds. And the shorter, the better. It doesn't have to be 30 seconds. A minute is way too much. What you have to consider when you're making a podcast is usually you say a couple of words as the music starts in. Then there's like usually a punch where the music kind of hits and you got to kind of get the feel of the music or feel of the podcast. And then the music starts to die down and then you start talking again. This is what TJ does. Now, if you wanted something differently, for example, that started with a punch and then ended with a punch and then you start talking, TJ can do that too. Typically, however, though, for the average podcast, it's hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. All right, we're back again. Today is, Friday the 13th or whatever, this type of thing. And we can stretch that out. We can shorten it up. What's nice about what TJ does is she not only creates that genre that you want, that type of music that you want, but she will fix it for you too. Because sometimes people will say, I don't like the strings, or there's not enough drum, or could you add this voice and stuff like that. And she does that. And the whole goal, like we said earlier, is we want to create a bunch of really happy clients. And then eventually when we start our business, we're going to, put on the website, we have a lot of happy clients and this is what we can do for you. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it's really flexible and the customer is king. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. So if somebody is watching, somebody's listening, and they're like, man, this sounds fantastic. I want to work with Mike and TJ. What should they do? Should they send you an email, go to your website? What's the next step that they should take?
Yeah, definitely send us an email on our website too. We've got a contact at introoutrobed.com. The website is introoutrobed.com. It's really simple. And like I said, and this is the first time we've ever really kind of mentioned it publicly, but TJ is willing. So it's what is it? It's April Fool's Day. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe
This
we're
is
a
no
fool.
joke, though.
Maybe we're a fool for doing this, but yeah, TJ, especially for the month of April, probably even longer too, we'll do it for free. We'll create an intro for you guys for free if you're listening to Crystal's live broadcast, or if she puts that out in the podcast. We'll do it for free, and yeah, and we'll work with you. Flexibility is our motto. We want to be flexible, and we'll work with you until we get something right. And sometimes it doesn't work. I don't think it has never actually not worked, though. I think it's worked every time. But it takes time, and we're dealing with on the internet. So I was thinking this, I was thinking that, but we're flexible. So just send us an email, leave us a message, and we'll get back to you. And we're excited to work with you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This was so awesome. And I think that everybody watching and listening is going to find this so valuable. But I want to ask you one more question, because whenever it comes to music, I want to know, what is your favorite genre of music?
Oh man. See, so I was in broadcasting, and I worked in a lot of different areas, and in the radio in particular. So there was a time where it was just rock. There was a time where it was just pop. There was a time where it was just country. And now I'm a wee bit older. And what happens is, I think I'm slipping back to my youth, and I'm going to age myself right now. Def Leppard, AC/DC. This is my thing. So when I do a podcast, when I do a show, I want that rock. I want that rock coming in. And that's what I like. But that's just me. So that's not aging myself. Everybody likes Def Leppard, right?
I was going to say, yeah, pour some sugar on me. Come
there
on.
You go.
Bring it on every time. It's so good. It's so good. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Mike, so much for sharing everything, because I think that music is so important to the overall experience of podcasting. But I also think it's important for podcasters to understand that you can't just go grab something off the internet and say, this is mine, I'm going to use it. I think that there's just so much red tape around it that we need to understand before we put all this work and effort into creating this amazing content, and then it gets flagged, it gets taken down, like all the nightmares that we don't want to think about. So if you don't want to worry about that, go work with Mike and TJ and go get some music produced. Like that's the
right.
Simple answer here.
Thanks so much, Crystal. That's exactly right. And you know what's, as you probably know, music sometimes wakes you up too as a podcaster. It suddenly puts you in that mood. And, as they say, you can see a smile, even on the phone or even in a podcast, you can see a smile. So when you're coming off your own exclusive music, you got that smile going, you got that feeling going, you're going to sound so much better.
Yeah. 100% agree. And I know that we have a few people hanging out here live. If y'all have any questions, drop them in the chat, drop them in the comments, and we will get back to them. If we don't, if something pops up later and you're like, oh, I wish I would have asked Mike and Crystal this, we will be hanging around. We'll be able to get back to you, and go check out Intro Outro Bed. But thanks again, Mike, for being here today.
Thank you very much, Crystal. I appreciate it. Take care, everybody.